Hello everyone, Mike Greenley with Tradition Companies. Last year, Tradition decided to introduce their very first whiskey. It was a bourbon that was sourced from Iowa. I bring in Carter Springer, who is the connoisseur of Tradition whiskey and otherwise. Carter, thanks again for joining us. Last year, you hit a home run. Tell us about it.
Correct. So this year we decided to go with a rye whiskey, not because we wanted to change things up from what we did last year, but because simply there was no more of it. This time around we ended up sourcing a rye whiskey from a small family-owned distillery in St. Petersburg, Florida, called Kazuba & Sons. And what we really liked about them is they do things the old-fashioned way. It's a family-run distillery. Everything is done by hand and done correctly.
How involved was the process this time?
So this time around, we tasted through several barrels of this rye whiskey, trying to figure out rye, compared to bourbon, ends up being a little bit more drier and spicier. And so that can be off-putting if someone is a bourbon drinker that isn't used to drinking a lot of spicy rye whiskey. And so having rye be the dominant grain in a whiskey makes it a little bit darker, a little bit more spicy and bitter, but if you've got a good corn blend in there, you can't really tell a difference between a bourbon and a rye.
What's the Tradition rye like this year?
So I would say the best part about this year's bottling is it's a great blend of sweet and spicy. What I mean by that is the rye contents of this really come out in cinnamon and clove and other sorts of warm spices, but then the sweetness of the corn content really shows off in that toasted oak note, the vanillas, the caramels, and the other notes you typically get from a good aged whiskey like this.
Where can we source it?
Well, Legends Club is the exclusive retailer of Tradition whiskey, so you can get it in a cocktail or buy it by the bottle.
Carter Springer is the aficionado and connoisseur of what's inside the bottle, and you guys are what goes on the outside of the bottle. And initially, how did you come up with the idea that you wanted to do something like this as a signature spirit for Tradition?
Well, we just thought it would be kind of a fun thing to do for clients and as a special gift to some of our favorite people. There's something that kind of goes along with whiskey as being, it sort of has a tradition of we work hard and we can have a glass of whiskey at the end of the day and go about our business. So I thought it might be a really good pair with Tradition Companies.
Absolutely. And Nina, what were some of the things you had to do conceptually to kind of get from where you were, which was a blank slate, to where you are now?
I think Becky was just a great lead on it. She did a lot of research in liquor stores, bottle types, and tying that in with kind of our Tradition brand and history. Last year's bottle was kind of our first conception. There were elements, we loved, elements we wanted to change for this year. And so it was fun this year now, kind of being able to elevate that based on what we like, and now we're here today with this.
Can you explain what that picture is about?
Well, that is a picture from the Ennebeck Construction Archives, and Bob Ennebeck, Robert Ennebeck, happens to be the man in the middle. And so I guess Tip said he actually did like whiskey, so hopefully he would be proud.
Yeah, we had fun with it this year. A couple of things for people who haven't necessarily been with Tradition very long, or maybe you have been, you notice some of the elements, but the Tradition that is in a script font at the front label is actually the Tradition font of our original logo when Tradition Companies came to be back in the 1990s. And then the black decal sticker on the front has our new Tradition block font and our T, so we're kind of blending the current Tradition with our history. And then on the back label, it has Sig Ennebeck, so the actual kind of founder, first generation and second generation. So it's kind of, again, just kind of pulling all of our history together and representing current and past.
You have a very, everything about it is very classy and very elegant. And then you have this gritty burlap sack. I love that.
You probably think the second generation brought it all the way to us.
Yeah. It kind of goes with the whole work, right? I thought that was a Nina idea, and I thought it was fantastic because it really brought in the grittiness of what the people on the bottle are doing.
Again, this year, 800 total, and there's a specific number that this bottle is. Can you tell me the significance of that?
Yeah, so that was something that we pulled onto that first bottle. Carter talked a lot about just from a whiskey drinker, knowing that it's a small batch and you kind of have a very special, limited whiskey is really cool. And so for us with Tradition, obviously tying that in, carrying this over, having people know that, you know, there's a limited batch. And if you have one of these, it's because, you know, you're a valued client, person, family of Tradition. And we want you to feel like you're part of the family.